Yes, good evening, Sanjay, and it's good to have you on our channel. And for our viewers, today in this episode, we have Sanjay Pinto, who is he's a multifaceted personality, and he's been a journalist. He's a lawyer now, so it'll be good to talk to him. Welcome, Sanjay.
Hi, hi Gauri. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's good to be on the other side of the fence for a change.
I know. So the intent is to, talk to you about yourself, your journey, and hopefully inspire people who see this, youngsters especially who see this video in terms of, what can be achieved in different fields. So we'll
When you say
start there.
youngsters, what does it make me feel like?
You think about me, all this white hair.
No, that's
So
gray matter oozing out through the follicles in my case as well. So we
yeah, so I think we're in a good position to mentor people. So that's
absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
so that is the intent. So let's start with. I know that your schooling has been in Don Bosco, and you still keep in touch. So we'll start there.
Yes, Gauri, my crusade of fight for truth and justice continues. Of course, now in a different avatar.
Yeah,
First, as a television journalist for half of my career, for 15 years with NDTV 24/7. That's the only place I worked.
yeah.
And as an advocate at the Madras High Court for the last 13 plus years, um, I'm not really doing a Dasavataram like a Kamal Hassan in that sense, but there are four avatars that I primarily have now. First, of course, the mainstay is law practice at the
Law.
Madras High Court.
Hmm.
Secondly, as an arbitrator, as an empaneled arbitrator with the Madras High Court Arbitration Center. And I keep saying this, I don't know how far it is true, but arguably the longest running legal columnist with 327 legal columns. I've been focusing a lot for the last almost a decade now, on spreading legal awareness through my
Hmm.
columns and also through my books. I've written four books. I'm an author of four books. Two of them are law
Hmm.
books. The last one, of course, High and Low, was published very
Yes.
graciously by Thomson Reuters, by you. It all started with just one message, and then it all took off. So I really wish all
Yeah.
publishers were like you and like Thomson Reuters.
Oh, thank you very much for that. See, the intent is this invariably, and I'm saying this very openly, that I've heard a lot of people say this that you send in a manuscript to a publisher and then nothing happens. And I've heard cases where, they get back, they're told after 18 months that we are not taking it up. No, somebody who spends so much of time writing content, you know, I know what kind of effort it takes to write content. So if somebody is writing that kind of content, the passion that goes into it, if you don't respond to them on the spot, or at least as soon as possible, I think it's disrespecting the author.
Absolutely. I think we as citizens have a right not just to write, but also to be read. I must tell
Hmm.
you, Ravi, going back to my student years, since you mentioned Don Bosco Egmo, where I studied, I used to, those days, the only voice for common man in the media was the letters to the editor column. So I started off by writing letters to the editor in the Indian Express, as it was then,
Hmm.
when I was in class 8 and 9 onwards, on civic grievances, on issues pertaining to the administration. And those days there used to be a very venerable senior citizen there, Mr. C.P. Sheshadri, whom everybody used to fondly call Master.
Yeah.
He was the longest serving editor of any publication in the country. He served for more than half a century, 50, I think 55 years when he finally passed away. Until his end, he continued to work in the Indian Express. He was an institution by himself. So I would go and I would not post my letters. I would go and physically hand over those letters, and he would indicate to me whether it's being published or not. Because not all that I wrote was published, obviously, because
Yeah.
there were so many letters that people would send,
Hmm.
senior people, accomplished people from the bureaucracy, and doctors and engineers and lawyers in those days. And here was a student, so he never discriminated, but he would indicate to me, and I would glean from his body language as to whether that letter is going to be
It's
published or
going to
not.
be published.
So
Yeah.
therefore, it's important to know. So when you mention that, publishers need to, because that's actually led to the rise of self-publishing today, where
Yes.
people who don't find a platform, they actually pay money and get it published. The
Published.
urge to be
Yeah.
an author is so irrepressible today, and it's also like a badge of honor. And you'd like to, at the
Hmm.
end of your career or the middle of your career, or perhaps even at the start of your career, I find many young advocates today taking to writing, which is a welcome trend. The urge to share knowledge, I think, is a very welcome trend, and perhaps it's like a blessing in disguise post the pandemic. where we had webinars and a lot of
Yeah.
distinguished people coming out, sharing knowledge, people willing to
Correct.
learn. I think that's
Yeah.
a good exchange of ideas, and I'm glad that we have publishing houses like yours who give people a good platform to showcase their work.
Yeah. Thank you again, Sanjay, because it is. I've taken this as a personal mission that publishing has to be different. So, I mean, our intent is to make it as, how do you put it, old world and
Oh, old world,
as
talking of
possible.
old world, today, when people don't respond to messages and emails and letters, I
Yeah.
must tell our viewers this, that my association with Thomson Reuters and with Gauri started with just a cold message, I think on a website. And I just sent an inquiry about getting my book published. I have an idea. And, immediately there was a message from you, the CEO, the head of the institution, and then we took it forward, and today you have High End Law published in record time.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important to respect authors, to respect writers, to give them that platform, so that at the end of the day, knowledge is being disseminated.
Yeah, absolutely. And the experience of working with an author, I mean, from a publisher standpoint as well as from an author standpoint, it needs to be a two-way street. In many cases, I've heard this again from many of the authors who come to me that they don't really have too much to um, affect the production. Once it is given, it's a kind of a cut and dry factory kind of process where it comes out at a particular time. It shouldn't be that way. I mean, all said and done, the IP, the content belongs to the author, so they have every right to bring it out the way they want. Everybody has a different writing style. You can't destroy that.
That's
So
again a
it's very
very
important.
important factor for an author. You don't want your work to be mutilated beyond recognition. So the
Exactly.
editorial freedom and space is
Yeah.
extremely vital and significant. And I think I found that with your publishing house as opposed to some others. In fact, all my authors and all my publishers have been very accommodating. One, of course,
Mm.
is I come from the media industry, and
Yes.
I've been an editor myself. So for someone to
Mm.
edit my copy, uh, I'm not saying the egos at play there, but there's very little scope I would leave for any editing. But if there's someone who makes suggestions, like in one of my previous books, there were some very well-meaning suggestions. At the end of the day,
Hmm.
a commissioning editor or editors working with you wants the best product out. As
Yes.
long as they don't interfere and poke their nose too much beyond the point, and the nose doesn't become like proverbial Pinocchio, then it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Just moving on to your, I mean, why journalism?
Um, See, I had I joined I mean, well, I was involved in journalism as a student right from, as I said, from my
Yeah,
teens
right.
with the Indian Express, and I later got to write a column as well, two columns when I was in the Indian Express when I was in college, both in Loyola College
Hmm.
and in Madras Ambedkar Government Law College. But even when I was in Loyola College, I started a students' magazine in the college because
Hmm.
I felt that the annual magazine of the college had only about 20 pages devoted for students, and there were about 2,000 students, so that was a mismatch.
Yeah.
So I had gone to the principal then and argued my case, and he said, "Don't do something about it." So I started a students' magazine of by and for the students. So journalism it was an outlet to voice my views. I had very strong views. I was involved interested in public service. I wrote the civil services exam twice. I was hell bent on Indian police service.
Oh,
God willed otherwise. But even as a student, I've gone and met so many police officers, senior IPS officers, giving them suggestions. I've interacted with them. I've traveled with them. Some of my classmates' parents were in the IPS. For instance, former DGP and former Commissioner of Police, Mr. P. Dorai. His son,
mhm.
Dr. Rajiv Dorai, was my classmate. So I've interacted with him closely. Didn't make it to the civil services. And then when I graduated from law in 1997, there was a compulsory 1 year apprenticeship rule which the Bar Council had brought about. Well intentioned, but at that time, I'm not sure if it was really required. Ultimately, Supreme Court struck it down. But by then, coming as I did from a middle class family where after 6 years of college education, the family would look forward to your contribution to the home kitty.
Absolutely.
So then an opportunity came in the form of NDTV. Then Prannoy Roy had started, NDTV a few years earlier, and then there was Star News Channel. There was a
Yeah,
vacancy popped up in Chennai, and I joined in '97 without getting enrolled because of that 1 year apprenticeship. It would have set me back by another couple of years to establish yourself. Those
right.
days, It was a big gestation period in law. I have an elder sister who went through that route system where you go under a senior or learn the ropes. After 10, 15 years, then you branch out on your own perhaps. So I did not have the financial cushion to do that. So for purely economic reasons, I joined journalism. I was happy because that's what I enjoyed doing. I was a
Doing.
debater in college. So it involved
Hmm.
speaking, it involved interviewing people, interacting with people. Every day was like an exam. No 2 days were alike. It was a lot of hype, it was a lot of pressure, and then it sort of suited me when I was much younger. I joined at the age of 23, 24. So
Hmm.
it suited me. Then after um, 14 and a half, almost 15 years, I, in a sense, played the prodigal son with the difference because my father, when I was in school itself, my father had told me and my elder sister that, we should become lawyers. He wanted to be a lawyer himself. He could not. So when I was, in NDTV, flying high, I thought my dad was just blabbering something. But it took me 15 years to realize that my dad was right. So to all the
Right.
youngsters
Hmm.
watching, don't discount what your parents tell you because your parents have their best interest and your best interest at heart, and they are right. At the end of the day, they have more wisdom and knowledge than we do. So I realized
Hmm.
after 15 years that my dad was right. Also, NDTV was going through a lot of churning. Then I went on like on a sort of deputation from NDTV 24/7, from heading the bureau in Tamil Nadu to editorially heading NDTV Hindu, which was a joint venture with the Hindu newspaper. And that
Yeah. Hmm.
sold to the Tandi group. So there was a lot of churning that happened. I went back to NDTV 24/7 as resident editor. But, I always tell people this, and I've mentioned that in my NDTV book, NDTV Days book as well.
Yeah. Hmm.
After being a Ranji Trophy captain, you go back to the national side, you wouldn't like to carry drinks to the field. So
Yeah.
becoming guest for other shows and all that didn't quite go down well with me. So I quit lock, stock and barrel and plunged into law practice 24/7 in Madras High Court.
Yeah, but that so that was about what again 15 years back?
2012. So it's about
2012.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
about 13
Yeah.
13 years,
13
13 plus
years.
years now.
It's a very long time again.
It is, yeah, and I've kind of enjoyed it. I must say that the legal fraternity has welcomed me with open arms, and I must give them credit for this. And I'll give you some examples as well. See, obviously, when I was with NDTV, I used to cover a lot of the courts because of my legal background.
Right.
Even as a student in school, and my father was a litigant. He was a bit of a court bird in that sense. So I remember going to the court with my big school bag, even when I was in class 6 and 7, attending hearings and all that. So, and most dinner table conversations would revolve around the court. So I'm no stranger when people say, "Oh, why did you leave the media to come here?" and all that. I've always been with law.
Mhm.
My elder sister was a lawyer practicing. Two of her seniors became high court judges as well. So we can I have uncles and cousins and others in the family who are lawyers. So I, in a sense, actually come from a family of lawyers. As many people may not be aware. I was into debating throughout in Loyola College and in the law college. So it came
So yeah,
naturally to me. So coming back when I enrolled in the Bar
Bar
Council in
Council.
2012, and I must say that and I'm going public with this. My good friend Mr. Satish Parasaran, now senior advocate, son
Hmm.
of the legendary K. Parasaran, former Attorney
Yes.
General of India. Satish, in fact, before I took the plunge, I met Mr. Senior Parasaran and told him, "Sir, this is what I want to do." He said, "Can you starve for 2 years? If you can starve for 2 years, enter." What he obviously meant was a nest egg, which I had built
Yes.
as a with my during my stint with NDTV. I had built a nest egg for 2 years. If assuming I don't get a single case, I should be able to run my family.
Right.
And at that time, I had turned my children were just born in 2011, so they were hardly a year old. So it was a big leap of faith that I took from the comfort of a salary every month hitting your bank account and NDTV
Yeah.
salary will
True.
come by the 31st of the month, latest by the first of the month. So from
Hmm.
the comfort of a salary into your account to getting into a profession like law where they said there's a huge gestation period, uncertainty, you have to learn the ropes all over again. Procedurally, you'd have to go through the grind.
Correct.
I was too old to join a senior. I was too old to
Hmm.
join a senior, and in many ways, I keep telling people that the column that I wrote was my senior. That a column that I still write continues to be my senior because it pushes me to do legal research, pour over
Yeah.
law commission reports, Supreme Court judges. So coming
Hmm.
back to Satish Parasaran. So when I joined, Satish called me up and said, "Sanjay, I believe that a lawyer, newly enrolled lawyer, should make his debut in court within the first week of his enrollment. So if you don't mind, would you like to appear on one of my cases?" who would say no to that? I mean, to such a sweetheart deal and coming from somebody
Yeah.
like of his pedigree. So you wouldn't believe. Satish, in fact, passed on a brief to me, which was a PIL for on elephants being chained and for a protocol to be it was a public interest litigation. An environmentalist called Sasha, he was a petitioner. So this was before the first bench of the
Hmm.
Madras High Court, Justice Iqbal and Justice T.S. Sivanyanam. Justice Sivanyanam, who's now the Chief Justice of the Kolkata High Court. That was the division bench, the first bench. And Satish actually came and sat next to me, almost like treating me like a senior counsel. Like he has engaged me to argue that matter. I mean, how many people would do that? When people talk
Yeah.
about
Very
the infighting and all that within the profession, there are these beautiful examples I can give people where I have seen, I've seen magnanimity, I've seen absolute grace, amazing grace, I would say, in the legal fraternity. And even today, see, when you make that lateral entry, you constantly have these procedural doubts. And I have a set of close friends, advocate friends, who may be younger than me, some of them, but are senior to me in the profession because I enrolled much later.
yeah.
Never have they adopted a condescending approach with me. Oh, you don't know this, you don't know that. Always clear my doubts. Even today, I have doubts, and I don't fight shy of asking people when you don't know.
Asking.
As a
Yeah.
journalist, I learned that. I mean, we would cover the PSLV launches in Sriharikota. Wouldn't know anything about rocket technology, but we would still read up.
Correct.
But law is
Mm.
also about that. It's about constantly reading and studying and not feeling ashamed or embarrassed to ask somebody
To
something
ask.
that you don't know
Yeah.
because learning
Correct.
is till you die you learn.
Yeah. Yeah. It is every day.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
it's it is every day. I mean, something very similar. The reason that I like publishing, though I've come from a different background, I entered publishing only in 2017,
Hmm.
effectively, when I came back from the Philippines and joined Nugent here. But every single book, I mean, we call it as an SKU, but every single book is a different product. Every single book teaches you something, you
Yes.
know. So the learning is every day.
So what did you learn from the high end law?
See, high-end law, very simply for me, the what I liked about it was that small things which it's very difficult for somebody like us to read a law commentary or even a barrack for that matter. It's actually very difficult, right? I've got
Correct.
used to it now, but it is very difficult. It's very dry. So if you pick a particular topic, if something is explained to you in simple English in 2, 3 pages,
That
I
is
think it makes a
exactly the
huge
USP.
difference.
I'm so
Yeah,
glad you said that. That is exactly the USP of my fourth book, High End Law, because it
yeah,
was meant to be law for the layman. Simplify
layman.
things. That's why I deliberately, in fact, some senior advocates have reached out to me privately with feedback saying, why did you add the SEC details and all that, page numbers and all that, citations and such. I
Mm-hmm.
deliberately stayed away from that because I didn't want the common man to be put off by all the SEC online, Manupatra, and all
Yeah,
that stuff, as
right.
citations. Just the case law was there, of course,
Mm.
because X versus Y. But I explained it in a simple manner, like, how a common man would need to know, so that the common man doesn't feel that law is full of jargon and, it's not for us. But law is for
No, I
everyone.
mean, just so you know, even now, this book is right here, and I refer to it many times because it's very easy to read, and that's the best part.
That's
Especially,
great to know.
we have issues in the in the apartment complex we stay.
A lot of people, in fact, some of my columns on, for instance, on residents associations and all that have gone
Yeah,
viral. So a lot of people share that. It comes back to me as well. It comes
yeah.
back to me,
So
and in fact, I myself, it's my reference book as well. See, obviously, you don't remember all that you've written. Of course, it sounds
correct.
familiar, and I must tell you that I would say the highlight of my journey as an author and writing legal books, law books, the latest, of course, high end law, was when Justice A.P. Sahi, former Chief Justice of the Madras High Court, and now the
Mm.
President of the National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission in Delhi, he actually quoted an entire chapter from high end law in one of his judgments.
Wow.
I thought that was such an honor, such an honor. See, it's one thing to have a small line or a phrase quoted, but an entire
Yeah.
chapter on misjoinder of parties. The Battle of Verses was the chapter,
Mm, mm,
chapter
mm.
41 or 42, I think. The entire chapter was extracted, and with due credit to the author and to the publisher.
Wow. Okay.
So that I mean, I'm so grateful to Justice Sahi for that. And that will remain one of my most cherished accomplishments as an author, as a writer.
In fact, what I've been wanting to say this to you, but it may be a good book to sell chapter wise.
Hmm.
Something that we've been thinking about. In
You
fact,
mean on
I mean,
Kindle, through Kindle, is it?
yeah, through Kindle or any other option. My wife and I actually we've been thinking about this. Invariably, when somebody buys a book, especially a law book, they don't read. They don't need to read the entire book. They need to read
Whatever
a
they pick and
particular.
choose, correct.
Yeah, they pick and choose. So if you're able to provide that content, even at a higher price, so it is possible that it may be far more useful.
That's a very interesting
And
idea. I've always
yeah,
believed in that, Gauri, because when see, I'm not much of a reader in that sense. I mainly read non-fiction.
hmm
And even my other book, my NDTV days, had 50 anecdotes in the life of a journalist. Chapter
hmm
1 has no connection with chapter 50, and chapter
yeah,
25 has no chapter with chapter 35, no connection.
right,
So anybody
right,
who wants to read the book, keep it under your pillow, read any chapter you want, close it, and next day pick up, the threads all over again. So that
correct,
there's no continuity between one chapter to another. So I think this is
exactly.
a great idea. I mean that you've bounced off.
I think we should do it. I mean, we've been toying with this. Unfortunately, publishers, international publishers, don't wouldn't want to take a risk like this. But so we have another imprint under which we do non-law books. So we've been toying around with the idea that maybe we should start selling
One was
chapters.
this. In fact, I got a lot of feedback. One was, of course, on the residents association that I wrote about. Also about pets in apartments. Pets
Yeah.
in common areas. And today, now with all these, there's a controversy raging everywhere.
Yes.
What are your rights and what are your duties? Everybody talks of rights, but in all my columns, I've also spoken about duties. There are fundamental rights. There are also fundamental duties under the Constitution.
Yes.
So all
No,
that
to
is a
me,
balance.
I read that, took some sections, and in one of our
Okay.
meetings, I actually used that.
Oh, good, good. That's nice.
So, so moving on, couple of things. One is, that the profession is becoming more popular now, if you can use that word, right? The intake every year is going up. Um, from what I hear, I think the output from CLAT, I think, was about 50,000 or something last year. I think last year or the year before. I'm not sure. So it's a very tough profession. To come in and make a mark for yourself is very tough. So you've done it. I mean, even if you take what you say into account, that you've been treated very nicely by people, I'm sure it wasn't easy. It couldn't have been easy, right? So, what do you think are the hallmarks of? I mean, or rather, let's put it this way: what are the attributes that one needs to have to make a success of yourself? You don't need to, be a very, very high-flown lawyer, but at least doing well. What are the significant skills or parameters that are required?
Some are very essential. One is patience. You need to
Hmm
be extremely patient, and that was a big adjustment for me because as a television journalist, I saw my work within seconds. There are times when we'd uplink it immediately live, not even within seconds.
Live.
It's live. So live success and watching the fruits of your labor live, as opposed to waiting for a judgment, filing a case, waiting for it to be getting the SR number, then the final numbering, compliances,
Yeah.
listing, hearing, judgment reserve sometimes. So it's a huge amount of patience that you need. And
You
also when
missed
you
out one
come out,
part. You
yes,
missed out the adjournments.
adjournments, of course. In fact, I seldom ever take adjournments. I seldom ever take adjournments as a policy because I always go prepared unless there's some exigency, of course. So once or twice I
Mm,
may have. So one is the enormous amount of patience to cope with the pace at which work goes in
happens.
the courts.
Mhm.
Second, patience in terms of your own success. Nobody is going to come to you as a greenhorn. You
Mm,
need to have some experience to be able to handle a client, to be handle a case.
yes.
Can't make clients a guinea pig. So they will obviously need to see some work in action. And today you have enormous advantage of live streaming and
hmm
online, which I think Justice Chandrachud, of all his achievements, I think this would stand out. That the case of Mathur versus the Mathur case uh,
Yeah,
on making video conferencing compulsory. So
compulsory.
so everybody gets a platform that way to showcase their work, and people are watching. Earlier, litigants would come. Now you have CISF restrictions. Only litigants can come in. So the
Mm,
gentle public can also watch proceedings on how X lawyer or Y lawyer is performing. So one is patience. to make it, to be able to earn your living out of it. Family support. In my case, I got 100% family support from my wife, Vidya, who actually told me, let's quit this journalism and let's take up something else. And then we decided on law. And not only did she do that, she also later on studied law herself and has joined me as in my office, in my chambers here.
Yeah.
So it's the two of us now. It's like a double barrel gun now, if you please. So family support is crucial. In this case,
Hmm.
of course, a married person, middle-aged and all that, going into law is one thing. But for a fresher, family support for the family that has a certain financial cushion themselves, so they don't expect you to start contributing from day one.
Day
Three or
one.
4 years,
Yeah.
and I find a lot of youngsters. I think I find a lot of law students today being extremely bright, as
Hmm.
opposed to earlier where they would go through this gurukuls. Today, many of them start off. I don't know if it's a welcome trend, but I'm noticing this happening. They start, two or three of them join hands. They start their own law firms. They're doing very well for
Yes.
themselves. You see,
Hmm.
whenever I've gone to law schools to give lectures, guest lectures, I used to go regularly to Symbiosis Law School in Pune.
Hmm. Hmm.
Dr. Sashikala Guru used to invite me, and I go to some law schools here as well. Some of the questions that they ask, are very, it shows a certain sense of original thinking. So some of the youngsters, as you rightly flagged this, when I was in college, perhaps the in thing then was to do an MBA, right, a CAT
Yeah.
exam. Gradually, it became the
Correct.
civil services. Now, I find even a lot of civil services, a lot of IAS and IPS officers, children
Yes.
taking to law. So obviously, there's a
Yes.
lot of growth, and they see a lot of promise in this profession. The second is, of course, family support. Third is self confidence. See, at a young age, let's say at 22, 23, after you go to your law degree, some of your contemporaries who are probably join the corporate world after an
Hmm.
MBA, and they get campus placements and all that. They'll be earning easily. Some of them even earn a couple of lakh rupees a month from day one. Here,
Yeah.
you're hardly about to, as I often say, you put your heart and soul into your work, and you may not make enough to keep the two together. So that vitamin M is a big factor. Do you have the one thing is to have the mental space and the attitude to wait it out. The
Hmm.
other thing is to have the financial capacity to actually be patient and wait for your success to happen. So on
Hmm.
an average today, good old days, it used to take 10, 15 years to establish yourself as a lawyer. Today, I think because of various factors, technology being one of them, maybe about 3 to 5 years, people can stand
Five
on their own
years.
feet. So that's
Hmm.
another thing. The patience and to realize what it entails. The willingness to learn constantly because the law is
Hmm.
evolving. Today's judgment, is overturned tomorrow. So you need
Tomorrow.
to keep pace with it, constantly learning, constantly reading up. Instead of
Hmm.
scrolling your phone in the court and looking at social media, I find a lot of youngsters, in fact, reading judgments.
Yeah.
I've seen them, all of them carrying their iPads and reading judgments. So I think
Yeah.
I would say it boils down to patience, self confidence, family support, and a certain financial cushion, either your own or provided by your parents, and
Hmm.
the willingness to constantly learn. These are the essential factors. Everything else, of course, is very rosy. I mean, the pursuit of justice, you fight for the downtrodden, all that is there. But
Yeah.
actual, for your survival kit, you need this.
And I mean, you mentioned symbiosis, and yes, you have the symbiosis, you have the Jindals, you have so many of them. But there are a lot of other colleges where, again, I'm given to understand because I had this conversation during a book launch, and I think it was with Justice Kanvilkar.
Okay.
And at that time, what he had said, in fact, his request was that somehow we should be able to train youngsters coming out of colleges, less branded colleges, if you can call it that, such that that you train them on actual skills which could be used in the court, not just theory. This
Absolutely. In
was
fact,
a
even
this was a request that he had made to, I think, CLEA.
I think Lordship hit the nail on the head there. In fact, even our present Chief Justice of India had, very clearly said that, he would like to see a lot of youngsters taking to litigation
Hmm.
as opposed to Justice Sanjeev Khanna. Very was very clear about it. He said, I want to see people, youngsters taking to criminal law for that matter. Now, I think, in law schools, we learn about, I think the syllabus needs to be overhauled. Not just in the national law schools. I know they have a lot of reading, there are a lot of rigorous curriculum that they have. Whether it's,
Yeah.
first of all, I'm opposed to this distinction being made or the favoritism shown to only national law school products or the top tier colleges. There are several people when we were around, you had only the government law colleges, there are no private law
Yes.
colleges. So we've all come
Yes.
through that system with great pride. We look at our, we say that we are, alumni of the Dr. Ambedkar Government Law College, and
Mm.
it has a lot of sentiment to it. Now,
Mm.
I don't think we need to, we shouldn't make a distinction between national law schools and other tier two, colleges or whatever. All colleges are equal, and students need to be treated for what they are, not for the badge that they carry. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, I feel real skills. See, they learn. I've had chatted with a lot of law students after my lectures and all that. They may know, for instance, with constitutional law, writ petition, Article 226, Article 32, High Court,
Mm.
Supreme Court, Article 227, a civil revision petition, CRPs, and all that.
Yeah.
How many of them can actually draft a writ petition from
Exactly.
day one? How many of them can hit
Exactly.
the road running? What about the
Right.
skills, the art of advocacy? Some of them,
Yes.
I've seen some young lawyers struggling where even to make a mention, and making a mention also are actually very challenging, because you'll have to tell the judge in first, you'll have to outshout the others when the judge comes. So I
Yes.
always, whenever I make a mention, I make it a point. As soon as the judge sits down, my voice should be heard. And so far, I've been sometimes, or often, I've been successful, sometimes not. Sometimes you get shouted at also because the judge may
Yeah.
not be in a mood to for mentioning that. Obviously the kind of pressure that they are under with such huge volume of cases that they have
Yes.
to handle. But sometimes it
Mm.
becomes inevitable to make a mention. So how do you make a mention in a court? How do you handle an admission? How do you come to the point? How do you summarize your case in 1 minute or 30
1
seconds or
minute.
15
Yeah.
seconds? How do you summarize a case in 15 seconds? So these are skills, and how do you go through the filing and compliance issues before you go to court? Your case has to
Yes.
reach the court. Your bundle has to go to the court. So I
Correct.
feel a lot of practical aware knowledge needs to be instilled in law students, at least in their final year. One is, of course, to have the practical training, the internship, and all that. How seriously people take internship these days, I don't know. But I've had some bright interns. An IPS officer's son who's actually studying in Scotland. He had joined me, and there
Mm-hmm.
was another boy who did a virtual internship with me from National Law School, Odisha. Two very bright boys. I was happy to mentor. I think it's important for them to have for law colleges to have practicing advocates from different domains. Somebody from
Mm-hmm.
IPR, somebody from writ,
Yeah.
somebody from arbitration. Have
Mm.
arbitrators, and also very importantly, see the examiners and the court staff. Those who are reasonably eloquent and articulate, you should have them as well come and give lectures to law students in their final year on how to file petitions, how
Yes.
to file a perfect petition that does not require any compliance or corrections.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
can come only from a person who's actually examining a petition when it's presented in the section, in the registry.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I think these are changes that we need to make. And of course, I keep, constantly suggesting things, the march of law can happen only if you think laterally. I have
Correct.
several other suggestions, like for instance, consumer law. I'll come to that later. But as far as
Yeah.
students are concerned, I think the curriculum needs to be more practical, and it needs to have real life skills so that students, when they pass out and get enrolled, yes, they have the bar exam and all that. They should be able to hit the road running.
Yeah. I mean, to use the what do you call corporate terminology, they need to become employable.
Yes, they also probably need to unlearn what they learned in the law college.
The law college. No, that's true. It's true. That's no. We have the same problem, right? So when we try and employ somebody to, for example, when I look out for somebody who writes software, I've had cases where somebody comes from a fairly good engineering college, computer science, but has absolutely can't write one line of code.
No,
And
no,
even if they
I know
can
what you
write,
mean. When I was in NDTV, I remember there was this person who came for an interview, and when I asked this youngster, what beat do you prefer? Immediately, Pat came the reply, crime beat. I said, okay, who's the commissioner of police, Chennai? Didn't know. The very
yeah,
basic things did not know. So
hmm,
therefore, it's one thing to have aspirations. You need to see whether you have any that basic knowledge, and that basic knowledge will indicate basic aptitude. So if you have
yes,
aptitude for something, you will be hungry for that knowledge.
yes, you will
So
try and
here,
learn for
it
sure.
is law in a sense, to a large extent. People who are what should I say? Who are famous family surnames, in the sense who come inherit the practice in a sense. Although a lot of another interesting trend I find is that a lot of bright youngsters whose fathers are well known, fathers and parents are well known lawyers, they don't join their parents' offices. They join some other office so that they are not pampered. They don't want to get pampered. They want to come
Yes.
up the hard way. I think that's great. That's really great.
Hmm.
So, but of course, there is that advantage that you have if you have a father in the profession. They say
Yeah.
law is a thing where if you have a father or a grandfather or at least a godfather in the profession, you will succeed. In my case, I had only got the father. So I had no father, grandfather in the profession. My sister also quit practice then. So it was, it's a lot of hard work and that self belief that will take you places,
Yeah.
and a lot of this training needs to be imparted in the law school, especially in the final year.
Mm. Yeah. No, I mean, that's true. Very, very true. I think it is true of all professions, and more so in this case because pretty much I would say what I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but about 80% of the profession are people who are self-employed, right? Mostly.
Yes,
I mean, so this is one of those rare professions where the chances that
yeah.
you're
There's
self-employed
no
are
your
higher.
investment is your hard work. Your investment
Hard
is
work.
your
Yeah,
intellect. Of
correct.
course, we have books and all that that you have to subscribe to, journals and
That's
all
yeah,
that. But today, it's everything is there online, SEC online and all that.
online.
And you have
Yeah.
Indian Canon, you have websites which are even Supreme Court Justice Chandrachud. That's another contribution. Apart from Sarvesh
Mm.
Mathur and video conferencing, also that Swapnil Tripathi case about live streaming, and then also he's made Supreme Court cases accessible. So
Yes.
technology has helped a lot of youngsters today. But I still feel that the actual skills of drafting or putting your
Mm.
thoughts together. In fact, the other day I came across a very interesting, and I think those who are watching this should also watch other videos. Senior Counsel Mr. Aramya Sundaram was at the Hindu VIT Law School event conclave. In fact, I was
Hmm.
supposed to go address one of the sessions, but I had an arbitration that clashed with it, so I could not, regrettably. And he spoke beautifully. In fact, I started using some of his tips. He said when
Hmm.
he drafts the prayer first. Then he goes to
Mm.
the position, the points of law. Then he goes to the case laws and then the facts of the case. So he drafts the prayer first. And I actually did that for my latest writ petition that I filed. I drafted the prayer first, the interim relief first.
Mm.
So I think today YouTube is a repository of so much of knowledge that
It
if you watch
is.
the right videos, and so many of legal luminaries like Mr. Aryama Sundaram, Mr. Kapil Sibal, Mr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. I've seen, in fact, even some of the eminent lawyers like Mr. P. Chidambaram arguing in court, Mukul Rohtagi.
Yeah.
So to see all of them actually arguing in court, be able to go to the live streaming and to watch them live, or even later on, many of the websites put up these clips of
Yes.
their arguments. I think that
Hmm.
is that is really enlightening.
No, good. I mean, so we generally keep these for about 30 minutes. So, I mean, attention span today is is that much. You have
It's still
any,
less than the periods in class that they have in school.
I
40 minute
know,
40-minute periods.
any other concluding comments from your end?
Um, I constantly keep pushing for legal reforms. I mean, I've been a reformist in that sense, always suggesting things to people.
Hmm.
Just this morning, I tweeted today, like I saw some of the latest movies that I watched with my wife, who's a big film buff. If you can ban smoking and drinking scenes in films, why don't you ban the scenes where the actors ride bikes without helmets, drive cars
Yeah.
without seat belts? So I, in fact, tweeted to
Mm.
the police as well as to the censor board to consider a ban on this as well, because a lot of youngsters ape these, actors and all that. They have a big impact on these people of a young, impressionable age. Some
Right.
of these things I keep suggesting. Also, this thing of when you've started live streaming and when you've started video conferencing and all that, and you've made it part of the system, why is that cross examination, taking of evidence, why can't that also be recorded, video recorded? Because
Yeah.
today it's your word against his word, and there are so many sometimes what you say is not accurately recorded. So I for one, I was just thinking aloud, even the other day I was thinking about it. Why can't cross examination? It'll be fascinating, right, for the general public, not just
Yes.
to see arguments in court, but also to see cross examination before the master. Because
Yes.
it's definitely not like what we watch in the movies. There's the
Yeah.
Shakespearean
Yeah. 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 It's not.
dialogues
It's
and all
not.
that. Yeah. So, and the real skill of a lawyer, I remember a former Madras High Court Chief Justice Sanjay Bala, when I had met him when he took over, he said even on the last day before he was confirmed as a judge, he was doing a cross examination.
Hmm.
So the real thing, and Mr. Jithrani used to say, real law practice lies in trial. Should be a trial lawyer first before you become an appellate lawyer and all that. So maybe this is something that can be done. Also to simplify law. For instance, the Consumer Protection Act, and this is one of my pet
Hmm.
topics. I've always been a consumer activist at heart. Uh, you know, uh, the Act. I'm sure most law students may be aware of it. The Act, the 1986 enactment, as well as the new 2019 enactment, prescribes a timeline of 3 to 5 months for the disposal of a consumer complaint. 3 to 5 months. That's such a
Hmm.
joke.
Hmm.
That's such a joke. It's
It
so
is.
misleading. You penalize others, the manufacturers and the service providers for misleading ads. What are you doing as a consumer body yourself? 3 to 5 months is a joke because a single adjournment in the National Commission is 3 to 5 months, perhaps even more, longer
Yeah.
than that. Single
Hmm.
adjournment. On an average, a case in one tier, either in the district, state, or national commission, takes about 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
Three
Oh,
to
I didn't
five
know
months is
this.
the thing. And why? Because you have this unnecessary rigmarole of procedure. You file a complaint, then you file written version, then you file a
Hmm.
proof affidavit, then you file written arguments, then you have oral arguments and judgment reserved. Why can't you straight away in one shot? And this is something that the other day I was thinking of writing to Prime Minister Modi also, and on writing also to the Law Minister and the Consumer Affairs Minister, that look, why don't we have a system, at least the consumer commissions? They're all now called commissions, no longer forum.
Yeah. Hmm.
One shot, file a complaint in an affidavit form with all the documents. Let the opposite party file their written version in affidavit form with all the documents. Have written arguments if you choose to, or just oral arguments or points of arguments. Finish off. That's when you can realistically, dispose of a case in 3 to 5 months.
Yeah.
This is
Hmm.
something. So I think you need to simplify law in terms of procedures and all that. Make it less cumbersome. Make it less cumbersome. Declutter the system that way. And I think that really, I mean, today we are talking of mediation, alternative dispute resolution,
Yeah.
mediation act, arbitration, and all that. I think time has come for us to, even in the existing legal system, to simplify our court procedures so that justice can be delivered, within a reasonable time frame.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. And that's very important, right? Because, I mean, justice delayed is justice denied. That's
Yes,
very
and
common.
justice hurried is also justice buried, they say. But
Yeah.
the thing is, for instance, even if you look at the consumer movement in our country, it's almost broken. Today,
Yeah.
you had a Confonet website, and for a long time it was not functional. Then it was moved to e-Jagrati website. Today, you can't get a cause list for the district commissions in the e-Jagrati website. Only state commission is available. Case status is
Hmm.
not there. So
Hmm.
what are these people doing? Why can't they fix the system? I mean, you're talking about, what about, this is also deficiency in service by the consumer commissions. First sitting in
You're
judgment
right.
over others. What about the
You're
commissions
right.
themselves? And they're all short staff. I mean, there are champions like you have in state commission, you have Justice Subaya, one-man army. 10:30, you can adjust your phone, your time, your watch according to the time he walks into the court. 10:30 sharp. One-man army. He's sitting alone and disposing of cases. You look at Justice
Wow.
Ahi in the National Commission. You have some
Hmm.
champions really in the system, but lack of resources, shortage of stenos, lack of
Right.
infrastructure. There's so many of these problems that they face, and if only more resources are given to these commissions, because today a lot of common people go to these consumer commissions to challenge things:
Hmm.
food adulteration, so goods and services, manufacturing defects, insurance
Correct.
policies, rejection of
Yes.
insurance policies. These are all real issues that affect the common man. And I think
Hmm.
this should become a political priority for the powers that be.
Sure. So thank you very much, Sanjay. Thanks a lot for your time. I know
Most
that,
welcome,
I know how busy you are. So it's been a pleasure.
I'm sure. Thank you. Thank
Thanks.
you for doing
Thanks.
this.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for doing this.
much.
And thank you for being Gauri. I think
Oh,
you're an author's delight. As a publisher, you're an author's delight. And I must say this publicly.
thanks. Thank you very much, Sanjay. See you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye
Likewise.
bye.
See you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.